Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is episode 149 with Kevin McCloskey. I had a great chat with Kevin and we talked about so many things. Honestly, it was just one of the most raw and real interviews I've done so far, and a real lesson in perseverance and keeping at the thing you want to do until you reach success. We talked about, lessons from starting out in drumline, his pivot into engineering, navigating a complicated family situation, and eventually settling in Charlotte, North Carolina, building a studio, and working with DaBaby. We talk about getting efficient in the studio, what major labels really want from mixers, mixing with headphones, his approach to mixing, taking care of yourself, having goals outside of music, and so much more, and kind of everything in between. So I think you're going to love this conversation. So with all that to say, here's my conversation with Kevin McCloskey coming up right here on Secret Sonics. Hey everyone, if you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Kevin Black Pearl McCloskey. Kevin is a mixing engineer based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and the owner of Black Pearl Studios and BiggerMixes.com. The music he has mixed has garnered over 5 billion streams, having worked with artists such as Future, Lil Baby, DaBaby, Givon, Joji, and many more. Former guest of the show, Mark Eckert, actually mentioned Kevin on his episode, and I finally decided to reach out and see if he'd be interested to join me on the air, which he graciously agreed to do. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Kevin.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. How are things going in North Carolina today?
They're good. Weather's beautiful, so it's finally warming up. Pollen has come down a little bit because it usually gets better on here, so I can't complain.
All right. Amazing. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about you as a person and your journey and how it kind of led you to what you're doing today. I think you're mostly mixing these days. So I'd love to hear about what that kind of trajectory was like.
I can start from the beginning.
Take it from the beginning.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was a kid, just a normal kid. And I pretty much grew up at a shopping mall. And when I got a little older, I was able to go around and do a bunch of different things. So I got really into video games. And I would go to like the music stores there and the comic book stores there. And anybody from Charlotte, there's a mall, Eastland Mall. That's the mall. I pretty much grew up there. If you were ever there during the 90s, you probably saw me. And I was the random kid walking around by himself. And anyways.
Formative years.
Correct. With that being said, I was introduced to a lot of things. I also got into sports. And through middle school, I was continuing to play baseball, basketball, and football. And I also picked up the drums. And as I went on, I stuck with baseball. Baseball was was my strong sport. I kept focusing on that, and when I would start dropping things like basketball because I wasn't good enough in high school, I didn't practice it enough, I would replace that kind of with drumming. So I was playing snare drum, in concert band and percussion in general, but mainly like battery percussion, not melodic percussion. In middle school, I got a drum set, and I got to be in a band, and that was really awesome, and I really loved that. And so I ended up going to a high school where the majority of my bandmates went. And when I got to high school, I didn't play football anymore. And I picked up marching band. And I fell in love with marching band. So I played snare drum. I was in the drumline. I was captain of the drumline there. And I also continued to play baseball. During that time, my senior year, the coach of the team had some recruiters from different colleges come out. And there was a couple schools, there were Division II schools at the time, that offered me a spot, not a scholarship, but a spot on the team if I wanted to play. I was really considering it. And I was thinking, okay, well, I can either go to these schools or I can, maybe pick something else. And at the time, I was interested in like civilizations and history and things like that. And didn't dive deep in it, but it always sort of fascinated me, kind of just like it does now. And I made a decision. My mom told me, she's like, all right, you're not going to school for that. you're never going to get a job in that or whatever. And I was like, okay. And so I went to go do music where I could get a very low paying job doing it, really make the college degree work. So I was going to go to a school, Appalachian State University. And at the last minute, actually the percussion instructor from North Carolina Central came to my high school. He knew my high school band director, and a guy named Kawachi Clemens. He's actually at the administration at Virginia State University now. Great dude, super awesome guy. Came down and auditioned me for the music department, and they were like, hey, we can offer you a scholarship if you want to come to North Carolina Central. So I was like, okay. And then I told him like my grades and my SAT scores. He's like, well, we don't even need to give you a scholarship. You can get a full scholarship, full academic scholarship right now.
Wow.
And when I went there, they had a really awesome drumline. They had a really good jazz program. Like it's still to this day one of the best jazz programs in the nation. And I saw that they had I think it was like Wynton Marsalis or one of the brothers would come in and actually teach there. And I'm like, okay, well, they're bringing in like really good people. Like, this is cool. Like, it's not just some rinky-dink music department somewhere. And they had a music industry program. And at the time, I'd been using Reason. And I was using Reason to write cadences for the drumline. So, like, I could really start to understand, well, what's the difference, between the bass and the snare and all those things and, like, how they're talking and not just writing things down. And at that time, also, after, like, a month or two later, I started making music. And Reason was really cool. So I had got into it that way. And so we had the opportunity like to tour the facility. They had a big live room that they just built, and they had like a little studio section where they had a Control 24 in there, the Digi Design. And those are cool because they sit up higher. They look more like, when you've never seen a board before, it's like, oh, look at all the lights, look at all these. And it's just a digital board, so it's not an analog board. But I didn't know any different.
Yeah, but if you don't know what's what, it just looks amazing.
And anybody that's used it, when you turn it on, it goes or you open a session and all the faders shoot up. And you're like, oh, yeah, I'm in here every day. Like, this is what I want to do if I'm going to go to school for something. But while I was there, I fell more in love with marching percussion. So eventually, when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, the goal was to go get my master's degree and become the percussion instructor of the college. Because the guy that recruited me, Kawachi Clemens, he ended up leaving. He went to another university where he had a chance to be promoted, like into the administration. At the time, I had taken over responsibilities of percussion instructor, like around my middle of my sophomore year, then through my junior year, senior year. I think I was actually there for 5 years.
Wow.
Earlier on in college, kind of out of nowhere, I kind of developed like anxiety, and I didn't do anything to control it. So it got worse and worse, and to the point where it's like I had to take a semester off of school. And I was kind of just having like panic attacks for no reason. I wasn't worried about things other than just worried about having a panic attack. And it was something that I really had to step back and get under control at the time. But saying that, my last year, I was doing it so much, I got burnt out. And I mean, I was tuning drums until 5 a.m, and I used to love that. I used to love the way, like how to make the drums sound big and huge. And just we had a 36-piece, percussion section. North Carolina Central is an HBCU. So anybody that knows marching band, we had like 8 bass drums. We had like 9 to 11 snares at a time. We would have 4 or 5 quints, and then we would use these tenors. We call them tenors, whereas a core style school might call the quints or the quads tenors. But they were actually like a tom, almost like a medium tom on a drum set. And so
like a 10-inch or something.
No, they were like 15. So it was like a floor tom, but it wasn't as deep.
Yeah, okay.
The idea behind it was, we really would try to recreate like the pocket and the feel of a drum set, but those tenor drums would always shoot the gaps, and they'd be, like an antiphonal part, like almost a call and response a lot. So I was always fascinated with like, well, how do we make all this work together?
Like a counter rhythm.
Yeah, so and that's what it is. And it really it's really what gives it the groove, because you can't always just play. You can't just play like what a drum set or what the drum part is to a song. There's no lyrics, like we have to find a way to make it groove, so the snares are kind of playing 16th notes and some diddles or drags with accenting mainly around 2 and 4, because that keeps the groove. But then, the tenor drum, the bass drums might be playing a similar part, because that's kind of the groove against like the tubas or the bass line. But those tenor drums were always shooting the gaps. And so I used to love like finding a way to make them have as much impact, but be deep, because most people won't run them deep. They'll tune them up a little bit to kind of shoot the gap a little harder through, like more of an attack. But I was more of like a resonance guy. So, and I think that's really kind of where I got into the engineering side of it as well. But, with that being said, I was tuning drums until like 5 a.m. before game days. I was also like partying crazy. Like we were wild. And so it all just caught up my last year. And I was like, look, man, there's nothing else I can do after this. The only other thing I could have done is like march drum corps, but I was from a traditional marching band. So drum corps, I just never learned, and drum corps sometimes could be square to me. But we were endorsed by Vic Firth and Yamaha. We did an endorsement with Remo. We also did one year. We did a endorsement with Evans Drums Head. And so we were legit. Like when you talk about HBCU culture in bands, we were top 5 of those drum lines.
That's crazy.
It was really cool. It was super competitive. But
it's such an interesting like startup for like an audio engineer.
Yeah.
I feel like it's really interesting. I've heard great things about drumline being great for like people getting really good at rhythm. Like I know there was a guest on the show named Carl Bonner who also I think started with in marching band, and I think Corey Wong. I don't know if you know Corey Wong. He's like a funk guitarist, incredible guitarist, and like rhythm guitarist. And I think he got like a lot of his chops in the marching band. I might be wrong, but I think if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I can't say enough good
Yeah.
things about being there. Also the experiences that I got to experience, like besides the whole perspective thing, and I'll touch on that later, but like performing in front of 80,000 people, that was crazy. Like doing it 5 years in a row. We used to go to this thing called the Honda Battle of the Bands. I don't even know if they still have it, but it was in Atlanta. And during the time, early 2000s, marching band was still huge. Like it was a big thing. So they would have these big Battle of the Band competitions in Atlanta, and it would sell out to Georgia Dome. And people just came to see 10 different bands do a 10, 12-minute show, And so it's like, I got to see that and hear like, okay, what does the standing ovation sound like with 80,000 people? But also what does it sound like when you don't do a great show, and it's kind of crickets. Like that's a weird feeling too, because we had a year like that. Yeah. So like I was always super thankful for that. I also like really got a really competitive edge in it. Marching band culture in general is, there's a lot of, I'm going to show you I'm better than you. Like you can't really tell someone you're better than someone else because they can see it. And we were willing to show it. Like we wanted to rip people's faces off. We were just that kind. We were cool dudes. We were not going to pick a fight with you or anything, but any chance we got, we were going to show you how much better we were than you. And so like we would practice. So we were practicing like 4 to 6 would be with the band. Then we'd go to dinner, and then 7 to 9, we'd practice with the drum line. And then sometimes till 10, sometimes till 11. And so I really learned like, what does it take to be at a top tier level for something, regardless of what it is, and then at least in whatever that lane is, and also like that when you do start from a place where you're not where you want to be, you do get there, and it's not an overnight thing. I think
you learned about persistence and practice and reps,
and so not even practice. Well, practice, but one of the best things I ever learned from there, and it helped me in almost everything else I've ever done, was I got rid of the practice makes perfect mentality, and I adopted the perfect practice makes perfect. So understanding, not only was I doing the percussion instructor thing in college, but I was also teaching high school drum lines. I got really into how to teach percussion, different techniques. And the high schools that I was teaching, I would start when they were like not good at all, and after 2 or 3 years, they were winning all the local and the regional competitions, and that was really good too. So I learned how to teach, and what I realized is in anything that you do, you can take as much time doing it as you want, but if you're not doing it properly, it's going to take you a lot longer, and you're never going to be that good. But like say working out. So besides my shoulder being hurt, I've been trying to work out more, and it's not about how much weight you're pushing, it's your form. It's about doing the moves correctly. Same thing like with guitar. Like I can learn guitar, I can learn chords, but if I actually learn how to play correctly, it might be harder at the beginning and it might not be as fun, but it's like an L curve,
Right.
it's an exponential growth when you get better because you're developing a solid foundation and not just dilly down around. So it's a gift and a curse for me, because I also know what it takes. If I want to do something and I'm like, oh, cool, man, I'd love to do it like that, I realize what I have to do to do it. And sometimes it turns me off. It's like, I know I just don't have the bandwidth right now to put that
Right.
type of effort in.
Are you like would you self-describe yourself as a perfectionist?